Again, I say welcome to our journey with the Gospel according to John. Our 10th week uh, with the Gospel according to John. And last week we dealt with the showdown between Jesus and those who were the keepers of the law, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And Jesus made the claim, you'll remember, last week, to be God's spiritual son. And the temple police had been called out. They refused to arrest Jesus. That ticked off the keepers of the law, but they said they'd never seen or heard anyone like Jesus. They just couldn't arrest him. Well, then we had the story of Jesus and the woman taken in adultery, and the rejection of Jesus by the keepers of the law. Let's put it this way: the line has been drawn by the keepers of the law, and Jesus crossed the line. And so from this point on in the Gospel according to John, we're dealing with Jesus who had crossed the line drawn by the keepers of the law, and everything is, all roads, if you will, are leading to the cross. And so as Jesus intensified his presentation of his identity, which is what Jesus was all about, as Jesus intensified his claim of being the spiritual Son of God, every step of the way you had the resistance from the keepers of the law. Now, next week, we're going to deal with the I am statement. I am the good shepherd. So the I am statements kept getting Jesus into trouble. And this week, we deal with another I am statement. And for after the story is told of Jesus and the woman taken in adultery, here is Jesus saying, I am the light of the world. And so this week we're dealing with John 8:12 through the 9th chapter. And I'm combining all of this together, these two chapters, because it all has to do with Jesus claiming to be the light of the world, which is pretty irritating to the keepers of the law. And so to me, the whole two chapters is about Jesus' claim of being the light of the world. And so I'm dealing with these two chapters as a package that can best be dealt with together. Now, these verses from 8:12 through chapter 9, and in chapter 8 is the conversation that Jesus had with the keepers of the law after he claimed to be, I am the light of the world. Now, this is very important. Let's remember the original situation. During the Feast of the Tabernacles, there were golden lamps in the temple that were lit during the Feast of the Tabernacles, signifying the presence of God. Now, this upstart rabbi from Galilee was claiming to be this light, signifying the presence of God. He was God's messenger. This claim further irritated the keepers of the law, and Jesus, in reply, simply claimed that he comes from and reveals a world beyond the common world of human existence. The spiritual realm is where Jesus comes from. and therefore only he knows that he is God's spiritual son. Only this upstart rabbi knows that he is God's spiritual son, because where he comes from is this spiritual realm of human existence. Well, to say that the keepers of the law were disturbed is putting it pretty mildly. And in verses 9:27 to 29 is a further claim by Jesus that this claim that he's making of being God's spiritual son will be verified by the crucifixion, which is yet to come. And again, this illustrates the writers of the gospel according to John. After the story of the woman taken to adultery, everything is leading to the cross. And Jesus knows that. So in 27:29, chapter 9, they did not understand that he spoke to them of the Father. So Jesus said, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, crucifixion, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own authority, but speak thus as the Father taught me. And he who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do what is pleasing to him. In other words, I don't do what's pleasing to the law, or to you as keepers of the law. All I do is to please God, my spiritual Father. Well, some of those who heard Jesus believed, and to those people that he believed him, he taught what freedom was all about, that you're going to be free from sin and free from the slavery of sin. And he claimed that their father in faith, Abraham, knew that the Messiah was coming, and he was the Messiah, and the Word of God that became flesh. And boy, for the keepers of the law, enough was enough. They picked up stones to kill him. Remember the story of the woman taken into adultery? The people had stones to kill her, because being stoned to death in public was a proper consequence of adultery. It was also a proper consequence, according to the law, of blasphemy, false teaching. And Jesus was guilty of false teaching, so they were ready to stone him to death. And what did he do? He went into hiding away from the temple. So he went into hiding away from the temple. And then we have chapter 9, who tells the story of the event of the man born blind, receiving sight by the healing power of Jesus. Now, there are two bookends to the story of this man born blind receiving the sight. The first is the question of the keepers of the law, based on the assumption that the cause of blindness or any human affliction was sin. And either by the person or by the parents of the person, if they were afflicted, somebody committed a sin, and therefore they had this affliction. But read what John 9, 1-3, the first bookend of the story says, as he passed by, he saw a man blind from his birth, and his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned? And this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be made manifest in him. In other words, this was event of the man born blind receiving sight was not for the sake of Jesus being known as a miracle worker. There were a lot of miracle workers around. Not because the man had sinned or his parents had sinned, but an opportunity for God's divine love to be experienced. This event was so important to the author of the Gospel according to John, because this was an opportunity for God to reveal that Jesus was his spiritual son. And remember what I read earlier, Jesus said, and when you lift me up to die, then you'll know that this is true. And so the man, having his sight not restored, given to him for the first time, was a way for God to make known that Jesus was his spiritual son. Now, the final bookend at the end of this story of the man made blind is found in 9:35-38. And it reads, Jesus heard that they had cast him out. They threw him out, the man born blind. And do you believe? And this man said, do you believe in the Son of Man? And he answered, and who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? And Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who works in you. And he said, Lord, I believe. All of a sudden, the story of the man born blind becomes a spiritual, born-again experience for this man born blind who now sees. And it was more than his physical eyes being able to see. He experienced the event of divine love in the encounter with Jesus. Spiritually, he believed that Jesus was the light of the world. That Jesus revealed the true nature of divine love. You see, in between these bookends is the story of the keepers of the law who could not see. For in their commitment to the law, they were blind to the extent that they cast the man born blind out and say, get away from us. They couldn't handle the teaching of Jesus that I am the light of the world and the spiritual experience of the man born blind who believed. You see, these two chapters reinforce the theme of the authors of the Gospel, according to John, that there's a spiritual realm of human existence beyond the human ability to understand, but it can and will be experienced as humans are engulfed by divine love. This was the experience of the man born blind. He experienced in Jesus the love of God. You see, in Jesus, we see and experience God. That's what these 2 chapters are about. I am the light of the world. Indeed, the story of the man born blind is the story of humanity. We cannot see. But indeed, it's the story of all humanity. We cannot see. But in the life of Jesus is the light of the world for all to see. Indeed, according to John, the light of the world was for the man born blind. And the light of the world is for you and me to experience God. That's quite a package. For our thought and discussion, let me leave you with these questions. Obviously, the keepers of the law had a problem with Jesus. What is our experience of having a problem with Jesus? Secondly, what do we experience in the lives of religious leaders today having a problem with Jesus and being ready to stone him to death? But thirdly, what are our experience of Jesus being followed as the light to the world in times of despair and darkness? It's a lot to think about, a lot to discuss. Enjoy the journey. Thank you for listening.